And I know that they were hinging it on this, the spin-off of that, the conflate of that, the A through Z, and forget all the alphabet soup in the middle, is
GetLoveDreamingPeach.com.
Dreamy Wednesday, May 21st. I am supposed to be working, but my kid has like tests, so I have to bring him to school later today. And so I'm also waiting for trial to start. It started, but this is my blanket. But Judge Canoni made an announcement that she's going to have a sidebar with each juror individually, which is not going to be on camera, no audio. And she didn't say why. I suspect it has something to do with maybe somebody overheard something, maybe somebody was exposed to something, maybe somebody overheard that somebody else was overheard something or researching or had an opinion. You know, it could be any of those. I have no idea. And I have no idea if we'll ever find out. I also wanted to jump in and say that my initial opinion about Alessi's cross of Burgess, he got me. He got me thinking like, wow, this guy is sloppy. This guy's unprofessional. This guy makes a lot of mistakes. This guy is not credible. But then Hank Brennan, the prosecuting attorney, came on and he cleared it all up, in my opinion. He explained it in a way that, again, I feel like the defense is always conflating something. They always take one thing and then they turn it into this other huge deal. They're like, this little thing is this huge deal. And then it's actually not. So that's kind of the vibe that I got from it, even though I was coming in hot.
You're hot and you're smart.
And I was like, oh my God, they destroyed him. He ripped him to shreds. He's so not credible. The jury's going to, discount everything he says. But then Brennan got up and totally rehabilitated it, in my opinion. And even though at one point I say, like, I personally have outdated things out there on LinkedIn and other websites if you were to search for it. And then I had said, if I was an expert witness, I would probably clean that stuff up. And then I realized, like, but maybe not, because it's like old stuff. I'm not thinking about that. I'm not thinking about my old LinkedIn that I don't even use. I'm not thinking about what my resume said on this website that I haven't even thought about in 5 years. So no.
Just popping in to say, and it also occurred to me, you can't easily just go back and update things because I had a resume on this one job site, but I haven't been on that job site in years. And so in order for me to go there, I would have to do this whole, I don't remember my password. And it would be a whole process to just try to get back into that website to even update my resume from, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it is. So again, I think that it's unrealistic to say, oh, just because you're an expert witness in a trial, that means that somehow you're going to go back to every old website that you had ever been on and update whatever information had been on that in order to make sure that every single instance of your credentials out there is current to now. It's very unrealistic. No, nobody's going to do that, in my opinion.
So no, I'm not going to go back to every old website that I had ever applied for a job and had my resume out there and update it and make sure that, in every instance where my resume might be somewhere out there, that it's current to today, because that's just not something that I have time to do. And then I saw somebody else in a comment say well, most people just have one CV. And actually that's completely false. Most people have various versions of a resume depending on what job that they were going to apply to, depending on, what they were going for. Because I have certain experience that's very relevant, you know, when it comes to dance. And then I have other relevant stuff when it comes to pottery. And then I have another kind of art. And then I have other relevant stuff when it comes to, you know, being a child care provider. Then I have other experience when it comes to being a presentation specialist. And, you know, on and on. I have various things that I've done over the years. I was an operations manager and an office manager. So, of course, you're going to have different resumes because you want to highlight what is important for the role that you're going for. And then as far as like people saying 18 years and he still doesn't have his bachelor's degree, well, again, as I said for my own self, I stopped pursuing it because I got to the point where that degree was not going to actually push me forward, promote me at my job, because the degree wasn't really attached to the job I was doing. The degree was kind of like a personal goal that I wanted to achieve, which is exactly what Burgess said. He doesn't need it for his career, and life and children and work and all these other things took precedence. But yes, he would personally like to get that achievement just so he can have that. But it doesn't impact his ability to do his job, his 700 course hours that he's taken, and 10 years plus of experience. So yeah, Brennan does seem qualified to me, and I will admit, Alessi, he got me scooped into his opinion and his perspective until Brennan came and cleared it all up. So, but yet again, I'm aware that my first impression when Alessi went after him and kind of made it look like he's so sloppy and he's unprofessional and maybe he's a liar and he makes all these typos. And, you know, there are jurors who will believe in that and they will not accept the prosecution's cleaning it up. But that's the nature of trial. Every person gets to interpret and perceive the evidence and the witnesses and the testimony their own way. All right, so I'm waiting for trial to start. As usual, I always prefer waiting 3 hours or so to even start watching because of all of the stuff that you have to fast forward. Like I said, yesterday I was watching. I didn't start till almost 11:30, and then by 1:30 I'd already caught up. All right.
GetLoveDreamingPeach.com.
It's cold and raining today. I'm waiting for my son to get to the car. He asked me to come pick him up. Oh, look, there's a blue jay. He asked me to get him a little early because he's kind of tired and hungry. So he doesn't want to stay for art club like he usually does. And now I'm just waiting for him to get to the car. But so I had been wrong. I had predicted that Alessi was going to say, you have no idea who, you have no idea where that came from. You have no idea where those taillight pieces came from. You have no idea who put them there. All that stuff. And I was wrong. It was Alan Jackson, and he went through and he asked a bunch of questions, and he basically, the gist of it was that there was a piece of glass that Trooper Proctor had submitted that he had found, and there was a piece of glass from the bumper that somebody had found, and it didn't match anything except for that thing, the piece from Trooper Proctor. And then Lally was the one who got up and said, you don't know where those pieces were found, do you? And wait, hold on. Oh, the teacher just needed permission for him to leave. So, and then, they said, well, they showed pictures, up close pictures of little tiny, 1/8 of an inch pieces. And what I noticed when I looked at it, what came to my mind was how much those little pieces look similar to, one, the holes in his shirt sleeve, two, the scratches on his arm. And the pattern of scratches on his arm seem as if his arm had been like this or something, or like this. Oh, here he comes.
10-10 wins. Remember that? It's 10. 10. So, I saw a little clip of Karen Reed coming out of court today talking about, oh, well, we know what we know. I'm ready to put on our witnesses. And she said something about the piece of glass that was on the bumper that former Trooper Proctor found on the bumper didn't match anything. Something like that.
Can you see what the issue with the juror
I cannot.
jury was? Okay.
No, I cannot.
Wrapping up week 5, how do you feel?
I feel great. I'm anxious. I'm ready to put on our case, which will be more robust than it was last year. So I'm anxious for everyone to learn what we know.
What's the significance of the Proctor?
More witnesses,
What's the
broader and deeper. Than
What's the
last.
significance of the Proctor piece of glass, do you think?
It matched the glass on the bumper, but the bumper glass didn't match the glass, the cocktail glass, the cup. Nothing on the bumper matched the cup. One piece on the bumper matched a piece found the second week in February by the former trooper Michael Proctor. So he found a piece at 34 Fairview, allegedly, that matched a piece on the glass, on the bumper. Nothing else on the bumper matched the cup. What is the other breaking event of glass? There's multiple sources of glass.
What were your feelings this morning when there was some kind of issue with the jury? What are the emotions?
We've had these before, so we just wait for the judge to evaluate and let it play out, and it all works out.
How do you feel about the jury?
I feel good about the jury. I feel good about our selection, and I feel good.
How about their case? I mean, they're almost wrapping it up. How have you found it to be different, same, similar, etc.?
Yep, abridged, fewer witnesses, and
Do you think they've been less effective than the last time around?
I don't believe so, but I don't know. That's for the jury to say.
Ms. Reed, what did you learn about the jury issue?
The doctor is not a neuropathologist. He doesn't perform autopsies. So I found him not qualified to speak about what a medical examiner should.
Why didn't Mr. Alessi ask him more questions then?
We have our own medical examiner.
When you have some days off, like you have today, what do you tend to do?
I'm going to have a couple days without an alarm and without high heels.
Do you know if there's anyone more than just Walter involved in their case, or is he the only one?
I believe that to be the last one. That is my understanding.
And does your team plan to call Michael Proctor?
TBD.
Still TBD.
Still TBD.
Watch out, Jesse. Okay.
What about Brian Albert or Brian Higgins? Ms. Reed, any relaxation planned over the next few days?
No alarm for at least a day.
Okay.
Thank you.
Miss Reed, what about the shoe? Yeah, I've been here.
Karen, can you see what the issue with the juror
I cannot.
jury was? Okay.
No, I cannot.
Wrapping up week 5, how do you feel?
I feel great. I'm anxious. I'm ready to put on our case, which will be more robust than it was last year. So I'm anxious for everyone to learn what we know.
What's the significance of the
More
Proctor?
witnesses,
What's the
broader and deeper. Than
What's the
last.
significance of the Proctor piece of glass, do you think?
It matched the glass on the bumper, but the bumper glass didn't match the glass, the cocktail glass, the cup. Nothing on the bumper matched the cup. One piece on the bumper matched a piece found the second week in February by the former.
Never forget the main issue, that a relatively young man, a police officer, was tragically killed. R.I.P. Officer O'Keefe. To say that she feels the neurosurgeon wasn't qualified to give his opinion because he doesn't do autopsies is absurd. The doctor was the most credible and qualified
Wrapping up week 5, how do you feel?
I feel great. I'm anxious. I'm ready to.
in this whole trial. What a stupid statement. Some idiot thinks it's good to see her smile. Oh, Karen, there you go again, misleading the public. The expert testified the glass on the back of the car could not be, quote, physically matched. Exactly. That's what I believed as well. Not that it doesn't match, but when she was saying match, she means match like a piece of a puzzle. They were small pieces and could not be matched like a puzzle.
that doesn't mean that they did not originate from the same cocktail glass. That's how I understood it too. Surprised the Commonwealth didn't make this more clear, and hopefully they will, especially now that she said this. I bet you are anxious because all you do is lie for this poor man. You aren't sorry one bit. How can people be so misled? Her whole behavior shows who she is. Unbelievable that people chose to believe her. I know my reading of the comments didn't align with what the actual comments were, because I'm just trying to capture. There are some people who think, oh, go Karen, pro Karen, love Karen. But I was pleasantly surprised to see some other people commenting honestly. And isn't that interesting? I also wonder if the Commonwealth is going to, make it a point to point out that while the glass piece didn't match up like a puzzle, it did match physically, but we'll see. I don't know. So, I genuinely felt bad for her for a moment. Like, I see her and it's like, I feel bad for her. She's young-ish. She's obviously very intelligent. She's like a professor of finance and some kind of, so I feel bad for her because I'm not a sadistic fuck. I'm not somebody who gets any kind of pleasure out of, let me just straighten up. I still have my heating blanket on because it's cold and raining. I don't get pleasure out of people suffering. Yes, I do believe in justice, and I want justice for John O'Keefe and anyone who has been harmed, whether it's the family, the friends, the niece, nephew, or any of the cases that I follow. Anyone who's been harmed, whether personally, directly, or indirectly, what I seek and care about is justice. And, justice for the sake of righting wrongs. You can't right wrongs like somebody being killed. There's no way to make that right. But at least the people who are responsible should be held accountable, and they should have to deal with the consequences of their own actions. So that's why I care about this case. This case is interesting because, everybody and their fucking grandma has an opinion about what happens when somebody gets hit by a vehicle, and what could happen, and what's supposed to happen, and where his body would have gone, or what would like all of these things. It's like, wow, these people. I have gotten to the point where I'm not even reading the chat. I did spend probably 20 minutes today kind of watching what the chat was saying. I did see, I'll say it's Wednesday, May 21st, 2025, and today was day 20 of trial for Karen Read. And while there still was a majority, I would say, of people who were like, she's innocent, there was, it seemed to me, a noticeable shift where I was seeing many people saying she's guilty, many people who, it seems, have seen the evidence that I've seen and are getting to the point where they're feeling like what I'm feeling like, which is she hit him with her SUV. And I'm at the point where I feel that it's possible. I'm still in the realm of it's possible she didn't know it right away, and then like it came to her over the next few hours. But I'm also like skating in the realm of like, she did know. And that's why she deleted the Ring camera footage that showed her coming back and showed her showing Jen and Carrie the broken taillight, and showed her showing her dad and her brother the broken taillight. But again, because those videos don't exist anymore, I am speculating. And I don't know, you know, if that's what was on those videos. They said she did come back at 12:36. They had her pinging her SUV, it pinged and ponged onto his Wi-Fi. And you could be about 350 feet from the house. So she could have been, you know, when they say she came back. All right, so I'm going to look over here. It says a city block in the U.S. is roughly 320 feet. Depending on the city and specific location, the length of a city block can vary significantly, ranging from about 200 feet to 600 feet. So 350 feet is like a block. So the people who are like, there's no way she made it back that fast. Well, maybe she made it a block away that fast. And they were fighting over the time of the actual impact. And, you know, I had said earlier or yesterday, you know, does 20 seconds really make a big difference? But if there's 20 seconds extra of her driving back to his place, then that can make it all the more likely that she had time to do this 3-point turn, hit him, and drive back to John's. And, they're not done putting on prosecution witnesses, so maybe more witnesses will come out that will make it seem more evident to me that she did it. Like, she knew she did it at the moment that she did it. I mean, she said many statements like, you know, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? She potentially said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. She said in a video, could I have clipped him? She said, I know I said I hit him, but did I say it as many times as they said that I said it? She mentioned, you know, could she have hit him in the knee, clipped him in the knee, or run over his foot, or incapacitated him somehow so he fell down and never got back up again? Like, she said those things. So there's that as well. And then, you know, the people who swear up and down and sideways and backwards and inside out and diagonal and catty corner and all that stuff. And cucumber, how you say cucumber, that, you know, his body had no signs of getting hit by an SUV. Oh, it's factually proven that he was not hit by an SUV. Well, false. The ME said that his injuries could have resulted from that. The surgeon said it. Remember how she said she was in the bed with Kaylee, his niece, who I believe is 17 now, and was, let's see, she was 6 years old at the time that her parents passed away, poor baby. And then, so Kaylee was 13 and the boy was 10 when Karen and John got back together. They had dated when they were in their 20s, I'm guessing. So they wouldn't have known her from then. So 10 and 13. I have a 13-year-old. My God, that's a tough age. So 13 to 15, who's now 17. 10 to 12, who's now 14. So they're 17 and 14. So I really want to know what they had to say, but of course we won't. But, okay, so she was 15 years old. I have a 15-year-old. Oh, no, he's 16.
So she's laying in the bed with her. Supposedly Kaylee's sleeping. So how many of those phone calls that she was making was Kaylee aware of? And again, was it performative? Did she know that she had struck him and she drove off? And then, as a way to make it seem like she was going nuts, she was calling him incessantly because, one, she wanted to have this trail of calls so she could say, I thought he was alive. And a witness. Multiple witnesses, because she called Jen, she called Carrie. Again, it's like the prosecution has not established, like, why did she call? I mean, okay, she had asked Kaylee to call Jen because she didn't even have Jen's phone number. Right, but Jen was at the house. Jen was at her sister's house. Jen was on the phone with them. Jen is integral in the sense that I think that in Karen's mind, Jen triggered that jealous anger, although she was already jealous and angry earlier in the day when she was like, you're with somebody else, you're not into it anymore, just admit it, you know. So it's not like Jen was a catalyst or anything. Jen may have triggered another, you know, plot line of jealousy in Karen's mind over Bella's mom, Ashley. Maybe, you know, I'm saying, like, remember that video where she said, there was a woman John had dated recently before me, Ashley. And, you know, so, again, speculation warning. Hello, this is future me jumping in. It's Saturday, May 24th, and I wanted to jump in because I cut myself off about the speculation, which is that my speculation is that Karen has a vendetta against Jen McCabe because a couple reasons. One, Jen McCabe is the one who said, when Karen said, I left him at the bar at the waterfall, the audacity to point out Karen's mendacity. Let's hear it.
Mendacity.
Untruthfulness or lying. By saying, I saw you at my sister's house outside. Okay, so that right there killed Karen's alibi. She didn't know where he was. She left him at the waterfall. That was one. Two is, I believe, when they were on the phone on speaker, when they were driving over to the Albert's house, and Jen had the fucking nerve to say to John, go by Ashley's house or Bella's mom's or whatever she said. And that fucking sparked, again, allegedly speculation, in my opinion. This is my plot line that I'm writing about why I believe that Karen Reed has a vendetta against Jen McCabe and wants to paint Jen as a liar who was out to get her and frame her for the murder of John. Okay, so there was that. She pointed out that she actually saw her at her sister's house outside. She pointed out that in the car, she sparked, in my opinion, jealous rage by mentioning Ashley's house. And then when she was arrested, Karen was arrested and she hired her defense team. By the way, Alan Jackson's former high-profile clients include Kevin Spacey. Jackson defended the actor against sexual assault allegations in Nantucket, Massachusetts. Robert Durst. Jackson was involved in the defense of real estate heir Robert Durst, who faced charges for the murder of Susan Berman. Sir Philip Green against assault allegations, a Saudi royal family member for sexual assault. Venice Beach hotel owner accused of murder. An NBA player accused of domestic violence. So he has a history of some shady people. But however, he is a defense attorney. Let's see. He also handled the prosecution of music producer Phil Spector for the murder of actress Lana Clarkson. Oh, he was a prosecutor at first. So he's a great lawyer, an attorney. I agree with that. But I also feel that he's shady and his tactics are shady. So what I was trying to say is that when they got those phone records and they saw that Celebrite timestamped the How's Long to Die in Cold search at 2:27, which I genuinely believe was actually the timestamp when she opened the tab, when she was searching for soccer or basketball for her daughter and searching the Weather Girls, It's Raining Men. And I don't believe she was Googling How's Long to Die in Cold until 6:23 a.m. and 6:24 a.m. when the other one was searched for, which makes sense logically, logistically, and in every way. And so I think that Karen Reed was also insanely jealous of her friendship, of Jen's friendship with John, and the kids' closeness to those, her, John's niece and nephew. And that Jen and Carrie Roberts were two women that Karen had been jealous of because of their close knit friendship and supportive relationships with John and the kids. And that could be part of why she called them two that night, because she had a vendetta against them, because she had a fucking issue with them, and she wanted to drag them into her bullshit, the murder of her boyfriend. She wanted them to be witnesses, to see her crazy and acting like she was jealous and didn't know where he was. And that's my speculation, that this is part of why Karen is going in so hard to Jen and calling her a liar and trying to pin this on Jen and Jen's family. That's my opinion. Speculation. You know what? I wanted to dive a little deeper into my little theory that I just thought of, that Karen had intended, speculation, warning, maybe Karen had intended to push into the lie that she last saw him at the waterfall. She left him at the waterfall bar and grill, and she didn't know where he was, and he never came home. And when she was laying in the bed with his niece Kaylee, calling relentlessly, leaving those messages saying, "You're a fucking pervert, John. I'm laying here next to your niece." Maybe all of that was to build up what she intended, potentially, to be an alibi, which was to say, I saw him last at the bar. Then he shows up dead on the lawn of the Alberts, and she was going to maybe pretend that she had no idea. She had no idea how he ended up there, and they did it. And maybe that's what she had intended, maybe not at the moment she did it, but those hours that passed while she was calling relentlessly, and maybe she was trying to figure out, how am I going to get out of this? And maybe that's when she deleted the Ring camera footage of her coming back with the broken taillight. Maybe she saw it on the Ring camera footage, so she deleted it. And then she was trying to think of, what am I going to do to get out of this? So Jen McCabe, if Jen McCabe had not seen Karen Reed, who else would have mentioned seeing her? Well, there was, so it says there's 4 witnesses who
testified about observing her black SUV outside the residence, the Brian and Nicole Albert residence, on the night of January 28th, 2022. I'm reading over here. So Jen McCabe saw a dark-colored SUV that she believed to be Karen Reed's. Matt McCabe, he hasn't testified in this trial yet, but he testified in the first trial that he saw a dark SUV outside the house, which he believed matched the description of Reed's vehicle, and he also noted that the SUV changed positions during the night. And Jen had said she saw the SUV. She noticed that the vehicle moved positions. Initially, it was in front of the house. Then it was near a flagpole. And then later she said it was further up the street. I don't remember her saying that. And she sent text messages to him, including here, ? And pull behind me, but received no response. Julie Nagel, a friend of the Albert family, testified that while leaving the Albert home at around 1:30, she observed a black SUV similar to Reed's parked outside. She also mentioned seeing a, quote, black blob on the front yard in the area where O'Keefe's body was later discovered, but she didn't recognize it as a body at the time. And I do remember her saying that, like, when it came out that he was found, she thought, oh shit, that must have been him, but after the fact. Then Ryan Nagel, Julie's brother, testified that when he came to the Albert's house to pick her up, his sister up, he did see a black SUV pull up to the Albert house. And actually, I think he said that his friend Ricky was driving. He was in the back seat with his girlfriend, Heather, at the time, now ex. And they pulled up like this at a stop sign or whatever, and they let that SUV go first, which was her. And but they didn't see the man. And so these testimonies have been central to the prosecution's case, suggesting that Reed was present outside the Albert home during the critical time frame. However, the defense has challenged the reliability and timing of these observations, arguing that they do not conclusively place her at the scene during the alleged incident. So what I was saying is that I think that she had maybe thought, oh, I'm just going to say I left the bar and I don't remember. I don't know where he went after that. But to her fucking chagrin, the thorn in her side, here comes Jen McCabe and fucking husband saying, I saw you. And then Julie and Ryan Nagel.
Karen, how did Jen McCabe
Another
do?
witness, another instance of perjury, or instances, I'd say.
How do you feel about her change in demeanor?
Change in demeanor? I didn't
From
notice.
the last trial.
I did not notice.
How did you feel about Karen, did you tell Jen to make that Google search that morning at 6:23?
I did not. Change in demeanor? I didn't
From
notice.
the last trial.
I did not notice.
How did you feel about Karen, did you tell Jen to make that Google search that morning at 6:23?
I did not. I did not tell Jen to make a Google search. I certainly didn't tell her to make the one at 227 either.
What stood out to you most today?
We know all the details. We know all the changes in statements. It's just what will her reaction be, and it's just more of the same. Inconsistencies. Every statement's different. Under oath, not under oath. With the cops are all wrong. This is very similar to what we saw a year ago.
Do you think that she colluded with why is she so inconsistent?
Because she's lying.
Do you think
that's it? Thank you.
Do you think she colluded with Katie Roberts?
There was influencing going on.
Karen, how did Jen McCabe
I do believe that there's at least a possibility that Karen had hoped she could lie and say, I don't know where he was after the bar and he never came home, and then just pin it on somebody else, which is what she's ended up doing, trying to pin it on everybody else. Karen's defense is every fucking body is lying.
and they're out to get me. The neighbors are about to start some thumping. Jen, her husband Matt, Nicole, and Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, all the cops, all the EMTs, all the forensic scientists, literally everybody. John's mother, John's niece and nephew, John's brother, John's friends, the other cops, all the troopers, all the sergeants. Now, I won't deny, Trooper Proctor, he obviously hated her. My interpretation was that he thought she was guilty as fuck and that she killed John. And he also was like a scumbaggy kind of guy. And so, fueled with his belief that she fucking murdered John, he said a bunch of nasty shit. That's what I believe. I believe that he knew. He knew she fucking did it. And he was like, fuck this bitch. Which you're not supposed to do. I don't believe in any way that he planted anything against her. Because there's so much evidence and so many witnesses. And they all corroborate each other. And they all point to one truth. That bitch did it. And she's trying to blame every fucking body and their mother and their brother and the niece and the cousin and the fucking the whole world did it. But her. But I really do believe that if Jen had not seen that car out there, Karen would have never admitted that she had been at that house. Justice for John O'Keefe and his family. I think I'm going to take a sidebar. Let me reflect. I want to say hi and shout out to you again. You left a very, very long and detailed message, comment with a lot of various things. And then I had said something like it being speculation, and you had said speculation. And yeah, there was a ton of speculation in there. A lot of like your own personal opinion, your idea of what happened that night, which I think the honest truth is that like nobody really knows. Maybe Karen Reed herself doesn't even know like what exactly happened. I mean, maybe she does know exactly what happened. Or maybe it's kind of fuzzy and hazy. And like, we tend to block things out that we don't want to remember anyway. Traumatic, or because we're guilty, or we feel guilty and we're actually guilty. Like we're guilty. We did that. We fucking did that. And we're guilty. And we feel guilty. So we block it out. Plus there was like, a lot of alcohol involved. And then there's, the redirected reality, I believe. But anyway, as I was saying, there's nothing wrong with speculation. I just think it's important. I personally find it important for me to say, hey, I'm speculating right now. This is my opinion. This is what I think could be, or this is my insight. This is what maybe happened, or this is a potential, a possibility. But I'm not going to claim that my speculation is factual, because in fact, we don't truly know. I do believe that today, one of the biggest missing pieces for me in the first trial, which is why at the end I was like, well, I still feel like the biggest question that was unanswered for me was, why did Attorney Lally say there was pieces of taillight in his shirt sleeve, but they never showed it? They never talked about it. They never clarified it. At least I don't remember. So it's like, okay, you said that, but where's the fucking evidence? Because to me, if there's evidence of that, that's kind of pretty fucking damning. And now they've showed it. And so I was off. I thought Alessi was going to say, you don't even know where that came from, do you? Trooper Proctor, blah, blah, blah. And then it wasn't even Alessi. It was Alan Jackson. And Alan Jackson actually talked a lot about this piece of glass that Trooper Proctor had found allegedly on the bumper. And I think there was a piece of glass that had been found allegedly at the scene, and those pieces of glass matched each other, but they didn't match any glass in the taillight, and it didn't match the glass of the cocktail glass from the bar. Take a listen to this.
Oh, Karen, there you go again, misleading the public. The expert testified the glass on the back of the car could not be, quote, physically matched. Exactly. That's what I believed as well. Not that it doesn't match, but when she was saying match, she means match like a piece of a puzzle. They were small pieces and could not be matched like a puzzle. That doesn't mean that they did not originate from the same cocktail glass. That's how I understood it too. Surprised the Commonwealth didn't make this more clear. And hopefully they will, especially now that she said this.
And I know that they were hinging it on this, the spin-off of that, the conflate of that, the A through Z, and forget all the alphabet soup in the middle, is, well, Trooper Proctor found a piece of glass on the bumper, and it didn't match the taillight or the glass. Therefore, it must have been planted. It must be fake. Like, okay. I mean, that's a pretty big fucking leap. Where did the glass come from? I don't know. I don't think that not knowing automatically means that Trooper Proctor planted evidence. Alan Jackson did try to clarify that there was no glass in the taillight, like it wasn't manufactured pieces of glass. And she didn't seem to be, like, she seemed not totally clear about that. I don't know why she, nor Lally, nor even Alan Jackson specifically said, what about the bulb? The light bulb, is it glass? If they said that, I didn't hear it. And I was wondering, like, is it from the bulb? Somebody in the comments said, like, oh, it's an LCD, something else or whatever. But I don't know if that's true or not. Wait, let me see. So it seems like there might be a couple of little bulbs. Looks like there might be a little orange or red bulb. But again, so what could it have been? I don't know. Is that one little bit of information going to disprove the whole case? I don't think so. I mean, no. So the other thing I think I already mentioned it, was that the little pieces that they showed seemed to be like the perfect little culprit of those holes in his shirt sleeve, which also would be the perfect little culprit of scratches on his arm. And I was like talking to my son about it, saying like would anybody literally believe that Trooper Proctor broke the taillight and then took those pieces, salt bayed some of it on the lawn, and then took some real little pieces and like stuck them, sat there like sticking them through the whole, like, for real? You really fucking think he did that? And then I saw some idiot in the comments actually saying Trooper Proctor planted that. He put the plastic pieces in with the shirt. Oh yeah? And how did he get them to poke through little holes? He sat there doing that with those 1/8 inch. No, bitch. Jump the shark. You've been done, jump the shark. You jumped the shark in while you were in a boat that was getting electrocuted, and you were standing there saying, do I jump in the water and get electrocuted and get murdered by a shark, or just stay here and get electrocuted? Because that's how fucking stupid y'all are. But that's okay, because, either she's going to get found guilty or she's going to not get found guilty, and she's going to either go to jail or she's not going to go to jail. It's not going to change my life one iota, except for the fact that I'm going to move on to the next case that I'll be talking about. But I also see a lot of reasonable doubt comments, like reasonable doubt. It's like reasonable doubt. Doubt has to be reasonable. It cannot be fantastical. It cannot be law, drama, sci-fi kind of bullshit. Because it's like, on one hand, it's like Trooper Proctor was so incompetent, right? That's what some people say. But at the same time, he was like a mastermind, brilliant genius who was able to think of everything. Like, I'm going to break the taillight, and then I'm going to, like, there's going to be big pieces, there's going to be little pieces, and there's going to be like microscopic pieces. And then I'm going to know that I have to take these microscopic pieces and I have to like shove them into his shirt sleeve right where the dog supposedly bit him, scratched. And he matched up, like, the level of crazy that you would have to be to think that that's actually real. Then what did he do? He somehow perfectly plucked little fibers off the shirt, which probably got ripped as the pieces flung through for real. And he's getting flung back and killed by the SUV, which is what I believe. That makes sense that the pieces flew in, he flew back, fibers got mingled in, there was dirt debris mingled in. So he also went to the lawn and got little pieces of dirt and he sprinkled that in. Like, so he's a genius, an utter genius, that he was able to think of all of these details. But he wasted his genius and his career trying to frame a woman he didn't even know for a guy he didn't even really know. Like, I don't know. I don't think they even really knew each other. Like, they might have known of each other because they were, both cops. But it's just so far-flung. It's so insane. And then again, it's like people are like talking about how biased the judge is. And I'm like, how is she biased? She's ruling for the defense sometimes. She's ruling for the prosecution sometimes. She's, and then again, people complain about how long it's taking or the breaks or the sidebars. And it's like, that's why I've quit reading the chat, because the chat are people who have absolutely no idea about what court is about, what law is about, what due process looks like. The fact that it is long and drawn out. They start at 9 a.m., they end at 4 o'clock. And yeah, you might get 3 hours of actual evidence and testimony in there. Sometimes less. And it's not because the judge is a bad judge who's just fucking off. Like today, they actually had the questioning of the jury. And there were so many people in there who are like literally saying the judge is trying to get a sense of who thinks what, so she can. Some people were saying that she was trying to feed them, her, whatever, what she wants. Some people were saying she's trying to see who she's going to get rid of later. When the fact is that from the comment that she said about when she asked the question, were you able to, not do any independent research? And then the next two questions where she says, did you hear anybody say anything about it? Did you talk about it? Whatever. She said, jurors are not meant to talk about the case even with each other. So I think that what happened is somebody said something to somebody. A juror may have said something to another juror, and then that juror was like, oh my God, she said this, he said this, whatever. Again, I'm speculating. I don't know for sure. I don't actually know what really truly happened. I think that's what happened. Even Karen Reed herself said, yeah, it was fine. This happened before. The judge does what she needs to, and then it's fine. It's the judge's job. It's her job. to do those things. Then she even said, I know you guys don't like it when we do sidebars. We don't like it when we do sidebar, but the sidebars are because there's objections, there's evidence questions, or there's motions, whatever. There's like all these things that happen that the jury is not meant to hear. And so instead of the jury having to stand up and leave the room every time, they just do sidebar. And also people are like, why is Karen going after sidebar? Because she's the defendant and she has the right to do that. So the judge said because they figured out some stuff on sidebar, they were able to, instead of having a half day tomorrow, she said we're ahead of schedule. So we're going to take the whole day off tomorrow and Friday and Monday because it's Memorial Day. Is it already Memorial Day? Memorial Day. Memorial Day on Monday. I always thought Memorial Day was like the last day of the month. But anyway, that's fantastic for jurors because this way they have an extra day if they want to go somewhere, if they want to get ready, if they have to chill, whatever the fuck. They get to have a little bit of their own life. You don't think it's intense and it's a lot to sit there and to be fed all of this stuff, all of this information and, not have any time to process it. Jurors need time to process what they've been told every day and to think about it, to contemplate it in their own mind, and then, come back refreshed and fresh again. It's like, don't you want Karen to get the best representation she possibly can? And don't you want the best for John O'Keefe and his family and friends? I think it's best when there's a robust argument on both sides, but they follow the evidentiary laws. And I've seen judges that I thought were sickeningly biased. For example, the Menendez brother, the first trial, that judge was sickeningly biased. He was sick. He was sick and disgusting. And so was that fucking evil prosecutor, or whatever her name was, Pam bitch something. Pam, I want to say Buchanan, but that's Sergeant Buchanan. Pam something with a B. Big B for being a big old nasty bitch. She didn't believe that boys could be molested. What a sick bitch. Same with the judge. So I hate their guts, but maybe after 35 years they'll finally get out and get to live some semblance of a life. But anyway, I've seen biased judges. I've seen, I watched the YSL trial somewhat. I saw that biased judge. I'm not immune from being able to recognize bias. I saw Carrie Morris, who wasn't a judge, but she was a prosecutor. She was fucking biased. She had an agenda, and her agenda was not aligned with justice for what happened. It was aligned with her own personal vendetta against Alec Baldwin. And when people are corrupt and biased, that's not justice. I don't personally think that Judge Cannoni is biased in the kind of way where Karen Reed is not getting a fair trial. All the shit she wants to say and talk about, and the red herrings and the straw man and the third party culprit and all these bullshit plot lines twisting off to the Jump the Shark episode, 558. They're getting to do that because that's a fair trial. Ultimately, the jury is going to have to decide. That's another thing I think is kind of fucking funny and hilarious and pathetic, is that I've seen a lot of comments like, the jury knows that Jen is lying. The jury sees right through you. The jury this, the jury that's like, you don't know what the fuck the jury's thinking. You don't even know who they are. You know who they are. You don't know what they think. There's no, you can't read minds. There's a hell of a lot of projection going on in those chats. And ultimately, I do genuinely believe that the real jury is seriously going to take this seriously. They're not going to want it to be a mistrial if it's at all avoidable. These are people from this community. These are people who live there. These are the people, like another thing is that I've seen people questioning, why didn't they move it to another location and why didn't they recuse the judge or, get rid of the judge? Well, first and foremost, the place where the crime happened is always the place where it's meant to be taken care of. Sometimes you do have to move a case because there's just too much, like with the Scott Peterson, and they didn't even move it that far. But why don't they move it? Because it needs to be tried where it fucking happened. That's where it matters the most. That's the community that is most impacted. That is the community that wants to prosecute or defend. Okay? That's why it needs to stay there, unless there's like absolutely no way that it can go there. Also, it's expensive. It's expensive for the judge. It's expensive for all the witnesses. It's expensive for everybody. It's expensive for the jurors. Okay? Plus, it's supposed to be a trial by a jury of your peers. So once you start moving away to a different place, it's not really as much. Yes, it can still be your peers if it's federal or whatever. And ultimately, if the case is strong on either side, then hopefully justice will prevail. But yes, I think you should be in the place where it happened, because that's even regional differences can make it less so of a jury of your peers. Then why didn't the judge recuse herself? Well, she didn't do anything wrong. And that's how fucking juries work. That's how trials work. That's how the system works. When a judge is assigned to a case, they almost always handle all the cases that are relevant to it. Unless, there are cases where the jurisdiction or whatever, it's going to be a different judge. But that's how it goes. And when there's a retrial, yeah, it makes sense that it's the same judge, because the judge isn't the problem as much as the chat wants to make it. So the chat who loves Karen wants the judge is the problem. The lawyers and the attorneys are the problem. The witnesses are the problem. The cops are the problem. The EMTs are the problem. The expert witnesses, the friends, the family, everybody, even the mom. The mom is getting shots. In the chat, there are people putting down the mom. The mother of a man who died after his sister had died, after his brother-in-law had died, after his niece and nephew had been orphaned as babies, after he'd been raising them for 9 years. And these motherfucking bastard bitches up in the comments, so far up Karen Reed's ass that you are disparaging a woman who has lost 2 children and a son-in-law. Sick. So sick. So I know I have bias because I already came into this thinking she was probably guilty, because I already felt that way from the first trial. And the things that I had doubts about, I feel have been proven. They proved to me that there were pieces of red and clear plastic from the taillight in his shirt sleeves. They proved that. There was dirt debris up in that bitch. There was no evidence that a body had been dragged from the house to the curb. There was no evidence that he had been in the house. Not a single eyewitness who saw him. His cellular data, his body temperature, the injuries on his body, the damage to his clothing, the straw from the drink being out there, his shoe being in the snow on the berm, his hat being stuck to the grass on the ground nearby where his body was, the broken cocktail glass having been found over there, all the pieces of broken taillight, which, yeah, they took weeks to find it because it had snowed almost 2 fucking feet. You don't understand that. And then when you see the pieces there, some of them are fucking microscopic in grass. Y'all stupid. I'm cursing a lot because it's late, and I'm just like disgusted at how stupid people are, how desperate for drama, and how, I mean, I love watching Law and Order and all those kind of shows, but you watch a show like that and you have got to know that it was a scripted show that moves at a pace that was meant for a 45 half-hour minute show. Sprinkle a little bit of ads in there. Give me my answer at the end of the episode. That is not real life at all. Not even close. And that's just not how Law and Order work. And the people in the chats complaining about it. That's why I'm like, I don't want to even watch a commenter. I did cancel my, I mostly did it because of finances, because I was like, you know what? Let me stop paying for memberships every month on these channels right now, because I'm not all up in them. The main reason I like to do it was because you can chat freely and you don't have to worry about slow mode. But, I'm not even watching on those channels because I'm tired of the bias of their pro-Karen bias, and I'm tired of the anti-prosecution bias. I'm tired of the anti-judge bias because I like to watch things that are neutral. And that's why I was watching those channels before, because they were neutral. But in this case, for whatever reason, I don't know, the Karen Reed cult is mind grasped on some people, and they're drinking the Kool-Aid, in my opinion, which I'm not drinking. But I also have come to really enjoy watching trial. I like to start late and have a lot of room to fast forward through all the breaks and all the sidebars and the lunch. And especially now that I don't really give a fuck about reading the chat or hearing anybody's opinion, except I just want to I just want to be in the courtroom. I just want to hear the evidence and the testimony. I want to hear the lawyers asking their questions. I want to hear the judge's reply. I want to see what I can see that's in the courtroom and base my opinion on that, not some unhinged chat's opinions, not even some lawyer on YouTube who's, perceiving it their own way. I want to look at it as a real juror would, who is just truly unbiased, who has absolutely nothing to lose or gain in any way. And that is how I'm enjoying it now. And I might at some point, because I've also been doing screen recordings of the little, not of everything I watch, obviously, but of certain little clips that when I catch them and I have a chance and I'm like, oh, I think that might be interesting, so that I can add some clips, some highlights and lowlights of the day. So maybe what I can start to do is, once I have those little clips together, I can maybe rewatch it and make my own little comments. But for now, this is how I'm doing it, and I am suddenly getting exhausted and also kind of hungry, and so I guess I got Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. I got 5 days to make videos and talk about this case until trial comes back. So I'm not even gonna stress about right now. I'm recording this Wednesday, May 21st. It's 10:59 and 40 seconds. It's about to be 11 p.m. I gotta get myself to bed, my kids to bed. So I am not gonna stay up all night trying to get this video done. I'm gonna work on it tomorrow and the other, rest of the weekend and whatever. So whenever you're actually watching this, thank you so much for being here. And these are my strong opinions. I really, truly believe that she hit him. I'm turning that off because it's hurting my eyes. I'm going to turn this off. How dark is it going to get? So it's dark. Let's see. I can turn that on a tiny bit. So, I think that she knows that she hit him. And I think that there's a possibility that she may even have done it in the heat of the moment. Like, fuck this bitch. John, I fucking hate you. We'll see. All right. Bye. Don't forget to hit like, hit share, hit subscribe, hit the bell notification. Join me on Patreon. Join as a free member or join as a paid member. Join me on YouTube as a free subscriber or paid member. And you can also join me on catlovedreamingpeach.com, my website. Check it out. And soon I gotta add stuff to my shop, my handmade art for you to buy. Okay, see you bye. So sweet peaches, this is about an hour or 52 minutes worth of screen recordings from this day. Some of it is rewound and repeated, especially like this little part where they're all gathered over there chatting. Looks like Alan Jackson might be like a little annoyed. I don't know, who the hell can tell through the tree that far away. Anyway, enjoy. These are clips I recorded from today's court. There was a lot of breaks, a lot of sidebars, and a very long discussion with the jurors. We don't know what it was about. Probably somebody heard somebody said something, but we don't know.
You are unmuted.
All right, could I see counsel at sidebar, please?
And then another long break, sidebar.
Talk about anything. So, an issue has come to my attention that it is going to make it necessary that I talk to each one of you individually over at sidebar with counsel. So that process will take a little while. So I'm going to don't speculate as to what I'm going to talk to you about. Please, when you go back to the deliberation room, talk about anything but this case, and I'll see each of you individually. And the process may take the cameras will be shut off, and I'm going to talk to the lawyers about whether we clear the no filming. All right, send you back, and then we'll send you back individually. Thank you very much. All right, now I'll see counsel.
Please be seated.
All right, so jurors, I still have a couple of questions for you. Were you able to follow the instructions and refrain from doing any independent research or investigation into this case? And we've discussed the other two questions, but I do need to stress for you that it's very, very important that no one discuss this case. Don't let anyone talk to you about the case. No comments about the case. You've seen how hard the lawyers have worked to pull this case together for you, and everybody's given it so much time. So please, let's make sure that we follow that. That means each other. So with that, I know we're late getting started. We're going to take an abbreviated lunch today, only 30 minutes, and abbreviated breaks. So no morning break. We're going to start now and go till 1. All right, Mr. Brennan, and we're taking a witness out of order. I apologize. We've got a witness here. Sometimes we take witnesses out of order. Ms. Hanley will be back later for the rest of her testimony, but we've got a witness here that we'll call out of order. Thank you. Mr. Brennan, thanks.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Commonwealth calls Dr. Wolf.
Raise your right hand, please.
You solemnly swear the evidence you give to the court and jury in the case now and herein should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
All right, whenever you're ready, Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury, spell your first name and last name for the court reporter?
Sure. My first name is Isaac, A-I-Z-I-K. It's phonetic. Last name is Wolf, W-O-L-F, like the real thing.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a brain surgeon.
Is there a special part of medicine that you study?
Well, my main interest in brain surgery is brain tumors and trigeminal neuralgia. But I also specialize in movement disorders. I do pediatrics and adults.
Are you an active working neurosurgeon?
I am very active working neurosurgeon. I get up every day at 4:30 in the morning to go to work, 5 days a week. I take call 300 days out of 365 days a year.
Did you work yesterday?
Yes, I did.
What type of work did you do yesterday?
I did 2 brain surgeries yesterday.
Are you working tomorrow?
I have 4 surgeries scheduled for tomorrow, which is why this is a little bit delayed for me, and I have 4 on Friday.
And what type of surgeries do you have tomorrow and Friday?
I have 3 brain tumors, 1 trigeminal neuralgia, and on Friday I have 4 patients with movement disorders.
You're here today as a witness. How much of your practice, how much % of your income is from being a consultant or a witness for a case?
Probably less than 1%. I don't do this for a living.
I want you to take us through some of
Mild
your...
hypothermia. When you get to 82...
Identified Mr. O'Keefe's body temperature when he was treated.
As I recall, his core temperature was 80 when he was found.
Is that significant in the process and development of his injury from the moment he fell and hit his head until his ultimate passing?
Well, hypothermia, if you define hypothermia, it starts at 95 degrees. Your core temperature is usually about 98, 98.6. 95 is very mild hypothermia. When you get to 82 degrees, you're in severe hypothermia. What happens when you're hypothermic, and I'm a neurosurgeon, but I can tell you that you get into multiple organ failure. Your heart starts to have problems. It can have arrhythmias. You're not breathing. And ultimately, at hypothermia, you also become unconscious and go into a coma-like state. Below 80 degrees, you're probably going to die. So all I can tell you, it wasn't helpful that he had a significant head injury and that he was then found hypothermic.
Is it uncommon, in your experience, for people that suffer this injury to pass within 5 hours?
Well, none of the patients we treated died within 5 hours, but it also didn't mean that we didn't realize that they were going to be in a potentially vegetative state. You know, when someone's hypothermic, you have to warm them up in order to establish a clinical status, meaning you can't declare someone dead with a temperature of 80. You have to warm them up slowly, appropriately, and then reevaluate where they are clinically.
I've asked you questions about whether you had an opinion about Mr. O'Keefe and when he died. I want to ask it in the form of a formal opinion. Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty whether Mr. O'Keefe died immediately or within 15 minutes?
No, I don't think he died immediately. Neither the hypothermia nor this kind of head injury would kill you immediately in any clinical experience I have. Neither the hypothermia nor this kind of head injury would kill you immediately in any clinical experience I have.
Dr. Wolf, thank you.
All right.
Let me have a moment, Your Honor.
Sure.
Thank you.
Morning, Doctor. I don't think we've had the pleasure of meeting. Welcome.
Thank you.
Sir, can you just describe, you started to do it a little bit on direct, a typical day for you?
I wake up at 4:15 in the morning. I go to my center. I set up patients with frames for their either radiosurgical.
Going to be my next question. Area of the front of his head?
Well,
force directly to that area of the front of the head. Again, namely the.
I didn't record it all. Now back to Attorney Hank Brennan.
From anywhere from a simple concussion, where you sort of are unaware of what happened, but you're still awake, you're confused, all the way to, you know, ultimately being in a coma.
Can this type of injury, the coup contre coup, and what you see in the review of your files, could this type of injury happen from an attack by a weapon, like a bat or a hammer?
Well, he did not have a depressed skull fracture. So any focal hit like that would more likely than not have caused a depressed skull fracture. Blunt trauma, the way he had, the assumption, would cause the coup contre coup without a depressed skull fracture.
When the coup contre coup process happens with the skull fracture, does anything happen to the front of the skull?
Well, you're asking me, does the rest, I mean, the forces, depending on how hard they are, can generate fracture lines all the way to the anterior fossa. So you can have fractures along the lateral temporal area. You can have fractures along the orbital roof. The orbital roof is very thin. And so those forces can go all the way to that area.
Did you see any sign of orbital fractures in Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes, he had both the ME and the pictures taken, and the neuropathologist mentioned fractures of the orbital roof.
Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty how those fractures occurred?
From the trauma.
Could you just explain a little bit how that would happen?
Well, as he fell backwards and he struck his head, it was clearly at a very high speed generated by the gravity. The bone, depending on the quality of his bone, the density, then generated forces. There's a certain amount of lateral give, and then you get a linear force going forward. It drives all the way up the clivus and forward into the anterior fossa where his orbital roofs lay. And this is why people like this get what they call raccoon's eyes.
Do you have an opinion whether the brain itself could have caused the orbital fractures?
No. The brain is a soft substance. You could literally put your finger through the brain. We often operate on people fully awake. The brain couldn't possibly cause a fracture. The fracture was caused by the forces generated through that clivus, that middle bone in the middle of his base of the skull.
Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty whether or not the brain in any way could have caused these orbital fractures?
The answer is absolutely not.
In your study of the records and photographs and in your experience treating these types of injuries, do you have an opinion, to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, whether or not a person would remain conscious or would be immediately unconscious after the impact of the ground?
Well, it's impossible to know whether he became immediately unconscious, but his injuries were very substantial, and it's more probable than not that at some point he quickly became unconscious and was unable to do functional activities.
What does functional activities mean?
The ability to, get himself up and about would be one of the functional activities. The ability to call for help would be a very significant cortical function. And that's why I was talking about, that there's a variation on a theme from a simple concussion to a severe concussion like this.
If a person does not have functional abilities because they are rendered unconscious, does their body, could it still move?
Yes, this is the interesting thing about our brain. So the cortex, which is the top portion of your brain, can get separated from your brainstem functionally. And what happens then is that your body is not acting autonomically, meaning vegetative. So why does that happen? We think it's as we were a caveman, and if a caveman became unconscious, as an animal came up to eat it, the animal would touch it. Well, you have these automatic movements. One of them is called decorticating, which is where you draw your arms like this and you throw your feet out. And then a worse neurological situation is when you decerebrate. Now you push your arms out along with your legs. And that would scare off an animal. So we think that over time, genetically, this is what happened to our brains in order to create these. But those kind of movements are not thought processes. In other words, your brain is not telling you, oh, you have pain, go ahead and decorticate or decerebrate. It's an automatic movement in response to pain.
I want you to take us back now to after the fall. Would Mr. O'Keefe, in your study and opinion, have died immediately?
No.
Can you share?
I'm sorry. Yes, I'll tell you. There is very few things that you head injury where you would die, quote, immediately. So if I took a knife and stabbed you in the back of your neck right below your skull and I drove it through your brainstem, you would probably die immediately. If I shot you below your ear and went through and through below your ear and shot through your brainstem, you would die immediately. But traumatic head injuries, you would not die immediately. It's a process. And it's a process of a combination of things. Brain swelling, which takes a while to develop. Decreased blood flow to your brain because you're getting swelling. And ultimately, death of the brainstem that controls your heart and your breathing. And so this is why there's a whole big issue about brain death. When is someone brain dead? Because it's not instant and it can take a long time to be conceived. In these injuries that are very severe that we took care of, there was a high mortality rate. In the linear skull fractures, it was about 67%. But it took time for them to die. It could take days to weeks to months. And also, these people got to shock trauma, so it was a while, whether it was hours, before they were even starting to be taken care of, and yet they weren't dead yet. That's why I don't think it was immediate.
Was there any other observations you made about Mr. O'Keefe or his body that support your opinion that he didn't die immediately?
Well, the medical examiner took pictures of his periorbital area and diagnosed raccoon's eyes. So raccoon's eyes occur because there's leakage through the orbital fractures into the periorbital space. Normally, it takes about 24 to 48 hours to develop. It has been noted as early as 1 to 3 hours, which would make it not immediate.
Could we please have Exhibit 14? Dr. Wolf, could you share with us what you see here in this picture?
So right here, you can see the black and blue that sort of configures, if he had his eyes open, like what we describe as raccoon's eyes, right? And that's not caused by direct trauma to his eyelids. It's caused by what I described as the basilar skull fracture, which went to the anterior fossa, which is right over the orbit here, inside with leakage of blood products into that periorbital area.
You mentioned that starts or takes at least 1 to 3 hours to begin?
Minimally, yes.
You take that down, please. If Mr. O'Keefe had been brought to a trauma center or emergency room, what would the process be in your experience?
Well, he would have been intubated if he wasn't intubated in the field. One of the first things you need to do in a head injury is control the airway. Why? 2 reasons. 1, you want to have enough oxygen going to the brain to feed it. And 2, you want to keep your carbon dioxide down because that causes increased intracranial pressure if it elevates. So you want to constrict the blood vessels a little bit. Then he would have had a CT scan immediately in order to assess whether he has a surgical head injury, meaning he needs to go to the operating room to evacuate something, or not. During that process, he's obviously going to be getting medication to decrease the brain swelling. And from there, you make decisions based on his neurological function and what you're, capable of doing to, spare the brain from the rest of the injuries that will result. One of the things that occurs with contusions is a great medical term is they can blossom, which means they can get bigger. And if they get bigger, they might require surgical intervention to decrease the pressure as well as the volume of the blood that's destroying brain. And so you do serial CT scans in these patients over time, anywhere from every 6 to 12 hours to on a daily basis, depending on what the case-by-case, production of blossoming is occurring.
You mentioned that about 2/3 of your patients who suffer this injury pass?
Correct. What we saw is that in the patients that suffered linear clavicle fractures, 2/3 of them ultimately went on to die, and 1/3 lived.
Is there commonality on how they pass?
One of the common reasons they passed is if they trapped a major vessel in one of the fractures, they would get a significant brainstem infarct, meaning a stroke, meaning lack of blood flow to a very significant portion of their brainstem. And so that was one of the causes of death that ultimately we understood. And then the others died from the increased intracranial pressure that drove the brainstem down through the foramen magnum.
Did you review any materials that talked about or identified Mr. O'Keefe's body temperature when he was treated?
As I recall, his core temperature was 80 when he was found.
Is that significant in the process and development of his injury from the moment he fell and hit his head until his ultimate passing?
Well, hypothermia, if you define hypothermia, it starts at 95 degrees. Your core temperature is usually about 98, 98.6. 95 is very mild hypothermia. When you get to 82 degrees, you're in severe hypothermia. What happens when you're hypothermic, and I'm a neurosurgeon, but I can tell you that you get into multiple organ failure. Your heart starts to have problems. It can have arrhythmias. You're not breathing. And ultimately, at hypothermia, you also become unconscious and go into a coma-like state. Below 80 degrees, you're probably going to die. So all I can tell you, it wasn't helpful that he had a significant head injury and that he was then found hypothermic.
Is it uncommon, in your experience, for people that suffer this injury to pass within 5 hours?
Well, none of the patients we treated died within 5 hours, but it also didn't mean that we didn't realize that they were going to be in a potentially vegetative state. When someone's hypothermic, you have to warm them up in order to establish a clinical status, meaning you can't declare someone dead with a temperature of 80. Patients, you have to warm with frames for their either radiosurgical procedures or stereotactic craniotomies. I go home, I make cappuccino for my wife at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then I get back to work at 6:30 and move on. I have patients that I'm operating on, and I have patients that I'm seeing through the day.
What type of patients and what type of work? Just in a typical day. What are you doing? What type of patients and what do you do?
It varies. I see patients with brain tumors. I see patients with hydrocephalus, which is water in their brain. I see pediatric
of the head, again, namely the upper eyelid.
That's possible, yes.
Is it more than possible? Is it probable that injury? Dr. Wolf, have you seen this photo depiction before today?
I believe I have.
is it correct that that injury on the upper right eyelid is caused by the application of force directly to that area of the front of the head, again, namely the upper eyelid?
That's possible, yes.
Is it more than possible? Is it probable that that injury was caused by the application of force directly to that area of the front of his head?
Well, an easy answer to that would be is that that's not part of the periorbital ecchymosis.
Thank you, sir. That was exactly going to be my next question. This injury is unrelated to any of what you've been describing, the fall backwards, the force transfer inside the skull, the, as you described it, the dura, the cerebral spinal fluid, all of that dynamic that you so ably described on your direct examination. This injury has nothing to do with that, correct?
Correct.
Thank you for answering my questions, Dr. Wolf. A pleasure again. No more questions at this time, Your Honor.
Okay. Any brief follow-up on that?
No, thank you.
All right, Dr. Wolf, you're all set, so please get out of here.
Thank you very much.
All right. Mr. Brennan?
May we have a moment to inquire of our next witness?
Sure. And come on, I see counsel inside our jurors. Feel free to stand up and stretch. Take a 15 or 20 minute break.
All rise for the court, please. Jurors, close your
And ma'am, I'll remind you, you're still under oath, and keep your voice up. Thank you.
Good afternoon. All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. And ma'am, if you could, just please introduce yourself to the jury again, spelling your last name for the record.
Sure. I'm Christina Hanley. Hanley is spelled Hanley.
And Ms. Hanley, given the break, if I could just ask you a few questions just to reorient as far as the items that we were speaking about yesterday in your testimony. First, starting with the items of glass that you analyzed in this case. The first of those items was an item 3-2. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And if you could, please describe for the jury, or please provide the jury with the description for that item that you received.
Sure. So item 3-2 was a clear glass cup with broken irregular edges, and there was some dirt debris material that was noted on the exterior and interior surfaces.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes. Did you show counsel? All right, thank you.
I did, Mr. Jackson. Okay. Yes, thank you. Showing you a photograph, Ms. Hanley, do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize that?
So this is a photograph that I took. It's item 3-2, but it's also, I would have to double check on my notes, but I believe it has item 7-12, one of the pieces that I'm holding that's showing a physical match between those two items.
Your Honor, call both seeks to introduce in the minutes of the next exhibit.
No objection. Okay.
Exhibit 195.
And Your Honor, may I publish?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 9490. Ms. Hanley, what's up on the screen, is that the photograph that I just presented to you?
Yes, it is.
And if you could, please describe for the jury what we're looking at here.
So that is a photograph that I took upon examination. It is the clear glass cup, item 3-2. And I'm holding another piece, which, again, I believe it's one of the pieces from item 7-12. I would need to confirm in my file, but I'm showing that one of the pieces physically fits with item 3-2.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Showing you two other photographs. If you could just look at those, look up when you're finished. Did you recognize those?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize those as?
So these are photographs that I took of item 7-12.
Your Honor, Commonwealth seeks to introduce and admit as the next exhibit A and B.
Is there any objection?
No objection.
Thank you.
Exhibits 196A and 196B.
And Ms. Hanley, if you could, just remind the jury as far as the physical description that you received in regard to item 7-12.
Sure. So item 7-12 consisted of some clear plastic pieces as well as 9 pieces of glass with broken irregular edges.
And may I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have first photograph 9476. And if you can enlarge that just a bit, Ms. Gilman. And Ms. Hanley, what are we looking at in this photograph?
So this is the photo that I took of item 7-12 as I received it. So there's the several pieces of clear glass with broken irregular edges.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have 9477. If you can enlarge that just a bit. And again, Ms. Hanley, what are we looking at in this photograph?
Those are the same pieces of glass as in the previous photo, just a little bit more up close of the clear glass that was recovered and is item 7-12.
Thank you. Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. Now, Ms. Hanley, as far as...
Just a screenshot of an image she took of the red microscopic pieces of plastic from his shirt.
And again, Ms. Hanley, when it came to your analysis of the clear plastic material from the debris from John O'Keefe's clothing and the clear plastic material from the defendant's taillight, what were your conclusions from that analysis?
Sure. Upon comparison, the clear plastic from item 7-18.18 was found to be consistent in color and instrumental properties with the clear plastic from item 3-1. Accordingly, the clear plastic from 7-18.18 could have originated from the clear plastic from item 3-1 or from another source with the same characteristics.
Thank you. Your Honor, may I publish, and I'm sorry, I forgot already the
Yes.
exhibit numbers, but
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have the clear plastic. And Ms. Hanley, can you describe for the jury what we're looking at in this? And Ms. Hanley, can you describe for the jury what we're looking at in this, what's up on the screen right now?
Sure. So this is the FTIR comparison data of the clear plastic from item 3-1 and the clear plastic from item 7-18.18.
And Ms. Hanley, if you could, using the laser pointer before you, if you could direct the jury's attention to which is which as far as the top and bottom here.
The top.
Sorry, I apologize, Your Honor. That's okay.
The top spectrum is item 3-1, and the bottom spectrum is item 7-18.18.
And Ms. Hanley, when you're comparing these two as far as the data that you receive, what is it specifically that you're looking at in your comparison as far as the data is concerned?
So when I'm comparing the spectra, I'm looking at the peaks in each sample to determine if they are consistent or not consistent.
Thank you. And if I could turn your attention to the red plastic material from the debris from Mr. O'Keefe's clothing and the red plastic from the passenger side taillight of the defendant's vehicle, what did you conclude in your analysis there?
So upon comparison, the red plastic from 7-18.18 was found to be consistent in color, microscopic appearance, and instrumental properties with the red plastic from item 3-1. So accordingly, the red plastic from 7-18.18 could have originated from the red plastic from item 3-1 or from another source with the same characteristics.
Thank you. And Ms. Gilman, if I could have the red plastic data. And Ms. Hanley, directing your attention to the screen again with the laser pointer, if you could delineate for the jury as far as which set of data is associated with which item.
So the top spectrum is item 3-1, and the bottom spectrum is item 7-18.18.
And again, if you could just direct the jury's attention with that laser pointer to the areas as far as the data peaks and valleys that you're looking at in comparison of this data.
So when I'm comparing them, I'm comparing the peaks to each other in each of the spectra to determine if they are consistent or not consistent.
And in this case, you found them to be consistent. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And Ms. Gilman, lastly, if I could have the microspec data. And Ms. Hanley, if you could describe for the jury, please, what are we looking at in this particular data set?
So this is the comparison data from the microspec of the red plastic from item 3-1 and the red plastic from 7-18.18.
And as far as the data in any microspec, but particularly this one up on the screen, using that laser pointer, could you illustrate to the jury sort of what these individual lines or what this data means?
So these are the samples that I ran, and they samples that I ran from item 3-1 and 7-18.18, and the spectra are overlaid in order to determine to look at it and to determine whether they have a consistent or not consistent pattern.
And from overlaying the data from the pieces of plastic from Mr. O'Keefe's clothing and the pieces of plastic from the defendant's taillight, what do you observe as far as from overlaying those two sort of data points?
So I determined that they had consistent microspec data.
Again, if you could just remind the jury as far as the microspec data, what type of data is that?
So the microspec, it analyzes samples that have color. So it provides information of a sample's dyes or pigments.
Thank you very much. Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. Thank you, Ms. Hanley. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Ms. Hanley.
Good afternoon.
Nice to see you again. We met about a year ago. First things first, you were just talking about some plastic pieces in 7-18.8, correct?
It was 7-18.18.
0.18, I left the one out. 7-18.18. We're dealing with a lot of numbers. I'm going to see if we can cut through that here in a second. Sure. First of all, you indicated that you were doing a comparative analysis in different, sort of different categorical ways, using microscopy, using the microspec, using the FTIR. I think you also use the FTIR in that as well?
Yes.
And you indicated that your analysis concluded with those pieces could have come from the same source, from the source in 3-1, the taillight. But you're not conclusively saying they did, correct?
It could have come from, they could have a common origin, or it could have come from another source with the same characteristics.
Right. So in other words, another way to say that, Ms. Hanley, is it may have come from the taillight, may not have.
It's a possibility.
Okay. I also want to ask you real quick about the taillight manufacturer. You were shown an exhibit. I think it's Exhibit 200, and I think we have that available. With the court's permission, we don't have to cut the lights. I think the lighting is just fine. This is exhibit, or a photograph of Exhibit 200 that you saw just a second ago. Quick question about that. In your inspection of that taillight, it's true, is it not, that is manufactured entirely of plastic or plasticine pieces. There is no glass in that taillight, correct?
I have to check my notes. I don't think I noted any glass.
Okay. So in other words, you didn't note any glass inherent in the manufacture of that taillight. It's basically plastic.
Yeah, I think most of the parts were plastic. I'm not 100% sure if the entire thing was plastic. There may have been other material, but portions were plastic.
But you certainly didn't see any glass inherent in the manufacture process.
I'd have to double check my notes, but I don't think I did.
Okay.
Do you want her to check her notes?
Why don't you? Are your notes in front of you?
Yes.
With the court's permission.
Yes, sure.
Okay, so I did not make any notation that I noted portions that were glass.
Great. Final point before we get into the actual analysis. On any of the glass, I want to shift gears to just the glass material that you analyzed and that you looked at and you inspected. You saw no blood, no skin, no biological material, no tissue, human tissue or otherwise, on any of those pieces that you inspected, did you?
Upon examination of those items, making observations of those types of material, that's not my area of expertise. I don't think I noted anything that was maybe consistent with that.
So in other words, even though you're not in the bio material expert section of the lab, you certainly would have noted if there was skin or biological material or obvious blood on glass pieces. You were looking at them, in many cases, through a stereo microscope, correct?
Yes, I would have made note of observations of anything that I would have noted on the surface.
Great, and you did not, because you didn't see anything. It was suggested with that, right?
I think I just made note, I'm going to have to check each item, but I think I did note that there was some dirt debris on some of the items.
But not biological material.
I did not note anything that would be maybe consistent with that.
Great, thank you. I want to talk about the comparisons that you did. And you'll forgive me, I'm a visual learner. So I'd like to talk about it in 4 categories.
Okay.
Linear categories. Category 1, item 3-2. Category 2, item 3-3. Category 3, item 7-12. Category 4, item 7-14. 3, 2, 3, 3, 7, 12, 7, 14. Can we talk about them in those particulars?
Sure.
Okay. 3-2 was the cup, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And I'm going to use the word cup rather than glass for obvious reasons. You can get confused by that. So when I say the cup, do you know what I'm talking about?
Item 3-2.
Great. 3-3 are the 5 items that were found on the bumper, claimed to have been found on the bumper by MSP or crime. Okay?
Yes.
5 items, A, B, C, D, and E, correct?
Correct.
Item 7-12 are 9 items, glass items, that were recovered at 34 Fairview by Trooper Buchanan in an evidence envelope, correct?
So sustained as to who they were recovered from?
Sure. Did you receive the items along with an evidence envelope?
I need to double check if it was an envelope, but I received it packaged.
Okay. And the packaging normally, in normal circumstances, the packaging comes with labels. It gives you reference about where things came from. For instance, when Mr. Lally asked you, were you aware or did you become aware that items were claimed to have been found on the bumper? You didn't actually find those items, but that was the description you were given, correct?
That was the description of the item in our limb system.
Okay. And going back to 7-12, that's our 3rd category, was that described as 9 pieces of glass that were found at 34 Fairview by a sergeant by the name of Buchanan? Or do you recall that?
I am not sure who recovered them.
Well, what it said on the evidence envelope, that's what I'm asking.
I would have to check my photos to see if it says that.
We'll get to that in just a second. But fair enough. 7-12, 9 items, A, B, C, D, E, and if my memory serves, I, K, and L.
I'd have to refer to my notes to.
Can you please?
Yes. So the 9 pieces of glass from 712 were labeled A, B, C, D, E, F, I, K, and L.
Great. And then finally, what was in 714, that's an easy one, 1 piece of glass.
That's correct.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes. If I could, Ms. Hanley, I'm going to hand you photographs. That should be 2 photographs of the exact same thing. Do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
I've never seen. I did not take this photo.
Understood.
I'm not. I haven't seen them, so I don't know.
So I'm asking you, look, I know you haven't seen that photo. Does it look like the cup?
It looks consistent with the cup.
Okay. Just gonna set this one aside for a second. Take a look at the second photo. Do you recognize what's depicted in that photo?
So I did not take this photo. It appears to be a photo of a container that another analyst took a photo of item 7-12.
And item 7-12, once again, included plastic pieces and 9 glass pieces, correct?
Correct.
Do you see the evidence label on the very top of that evidence envelope?
I'm not sure which label you're talking about.
One under the red tape.
Yes.
Does that appear to be a label marker that's done to maintain chain of custody?
So I think that label. Sorry.
Sure. Can we bring these over to the side?
Sure.
Okay.